Alright, big stuff here. The giants of the manga publishing world have launched a very high-profile lawsuit in a bid to fight against online media piracy. Now, very interestingly, this does not target individual creators, as I often cover on this channel, and actually it doesn't even target individual websites hosting the pirated content. No, we're actually going a step further here. On February 1st, 2022, Shueisha Incorporated, together with Kadokawa, Kodansha, and Shogakukan, filed a lawsuit against Cloudflare Incorporated, located in San Francisco, California, USA. In the Tokyo District Court, seeking an injunction against the public transmission and reproduction of piracy contents and compensation for damages. The amount of damages claimed is based on one work by each plaintiff and $4 million in total for 4 works as a partial claim. And at this stage, I should note that what I'm reading is a public statement issued by Shueisha, one of the plaintiffs. So, take that for what you will. It's obviously going to come equipped with a large degree of bias as a result. But essentially what's happening here is that these companies are suing a content delivery network, which basically makes it possible for piracy websites to operate at the sheer scale that they do. Which is an interesting case because I don't think that we as a society have quite nailed down the potential culpability of parties like these when it comes to piracy. But what I would like to note right off the bat is that the damages being sought is a really odd number. 4 million, assumedly US dollary dues, based on one work from each publisher. Now to people like you and me, $4 million, yeah, that's a lot of money. But to these companies, it's almost negligible. For example, Shueisha's One Piece has grossed almost $3 billion in manga sales. But that's definitely not a fair comparison, so let's take a relatively new series like, say, Spy Family. And in 2021, that single property earned almost $25 million in sales. And that's just one of the hundreds of lucrative series that Shueisha has, and Shueisha is just one of the 4 plaintiffs in this case. So $1 million in damages to them is nothing. What I'm trying to get at is that this isn't about money. The $4 million number is more ceremonial than anything. It's a number big enough that it needs to be taken seriously by Cloudflare, but it's also not a number big enough to be worth fighting an extensive court case over. Because when you're dealing with cases between companies across international borders, those costs are going to spiral out of control very very quickly. Like, we're talking teams and teams of extraordinarily expensive lawyers and translators and researchers and interpreters, just stuff. There's so much money. And it would not surprise me if it ended up costing Cloudflare more money to defend this case than it would to just pay out the damages and acquiesce to the demands. Now, to be fair, they also state that that 4 million number is a partial claim, leaving the case open for further damages. But it's about time that we ask ourselves an important question. What is Cloudflare? Cloudflare is one of the largest content delivery network providers in the world. Cloudflare provides its service to 9 of the top 10 malicious piracy sites in terms of traffic, and as of December 2021, provided its services to more than half of the top 10 sites for many months, in brackets. The plaintiffs' 4 publishers, together with their legal advisors, have been repeatedly called for Cloudflare concerning 9 specific piracy sites, which clearly infringe copyrights and the infringing content illegally stored on those sites. And then they go into a list of their requests. I'm gonna be honest, the English in this official public statement isn't the best, but they have called on Cloudflare to stop public transmissions through Cloudflare's server, stop temporary caching of Cloudflare's servers in Japan, and cancel contracts with operators of piracy sites that are clearly illegal. Now, at this point, you might be asking why we're going after Cloudflare instead of, say, the actual websites engaged in said piracy, which has been done in the past. Well, it's because that's just a bit of an impossible task. Most of those websites are operated in countries where the Japanese legal system can't necessarily reach them, and for every one of those websites that gets taken down, another 5 to 10 just spawn into existence to take their place. So here these manga giants are looking to destroy the spawner, the service that allows them to survive and thrive. And Shueisha does provide an explanation as to exactly how this dynamic works. CDN providers set up high-capacity servers in various parts of the world and temporarily duplicate cache the contents of the contracted sites on these servers to distribute the access points from users, while at the same time ensuring the communication speed of the sites by delivering data from the server closest to the users. The service itself is recognized as one of the public services essential for maintaining a comfortable internet environment. So basically, Cloudflare provides fast distribution of websites on a scale which traditionally would have been handled on, say, an individual server or servers located in one place, which can be more easily strained. And from here on out, I promise no more computery speak. This is an interesting question though. I'm not going to continue reading it verbatim, but Shueisha does go on to assert that Cloudflare have been rather uncooperative with requests to deny services to sites engaging in piracy. So we can and should be asking ourselves, how responsible is the service provider to this illegal activity? However, even with that very reasonable question out there, I still think that this course of action from the companies is the least correct, and I'll explain why. My personal opinion on piracy is that if it's a practice that is significant significantly impacting your colossal media business, then that's a problem with your distribution. For example, the reason why an overwhelming amount of people read One Piece scans is because Shueisha prioritizes physical print release of Weekly Shonen Jump, which means that they need to send magazines all across Japan like a week in advance so that they're ready to be sold on the day that they get released. And wouldn't you know it, turns out some devious individuals decide to upload that content early. So here the solution would be to prioritize the digital release. If there was a competitive official release that came out around the same time or even before the scans dropped, then scan groups covering One Piece and I guess all Weekly Shonen Jump series would be killed off overnight. And in terms of economic impact, Shueisha releases these chapters for free online already, so there's no loss there. And as for the print magazine, Shueisha makes comparatively little revenue off those sales. The vast majority of revenue comes from selling manga volumes and merchandising, so it's not like it would lead to some sort of financial collapse. And some One Piece readers might be watching this and be like, nah, I don't read the official translation because of X, Y, and Z. But there is no doubt in my mind that if the official translation came out before the scans, you would be reading it. Because in the end, we just want our One Piece drug as fast as possible, which is such a basic market need that I'm not sure these companies either understand or care about. Because the solution that they're proposing here isn't thinking, how can we better serve the customer? The solution they're proposing is, how can we force the customer to consume the product in exactly the way we stipulate? And I guess at this point I should say this: I condemn and do not support piracy. I particularly don't support piracy because websites aren't providing this content out of the goodness of their hearts. It's a definite business. These sites run ads and generate revenue from blatantly stolen content. But with that said, my views do get slightly more complex because I don't think that legality necessarily equals morality, especially when it comes to media. I think there are times when piracy is perfectly acceptable. So for example, when there is no legal alternative for access to the product. You see this a lot in the gaming world, but for a manga-specific example, how about JoJo's Bizarre Adventure? When I first started getting into that series, the official translation had just started part 4, and there was no legal way to read parts 5, 6, 7, and 8. Well, no legal way other than learning Japanese and buying those volumes, which I do think is an unreasonable barrier to entry. So I read the scans, and honestly, I still do. Because at the time of recording this video, Viz aren't even halfway through releasing part 5, despite the fact that they've already started releasing part 6. It is an absolute mess when it comes to trying to legally access JoJo in English. And it's like, I have money that I want to give you for the product. However, the product doesn't exist. But the product not existing doesn't mean that my interest stops existing. So my options become, do I wait like a decade for Viz to catch up and get to part 8? If they do get to part 8 at all, that's never a guarantee in publishing, because they're only going to do it if it makes the money. Or do I just forget that whole thing and turn to other options because it's quick and easy? And there's a bit of a philosophical argument to be had in this case, because from my perspective, I'm not doing anything wrong because it's not costing anyone revenue. It does get a bit more interesting with series that never make it overseas and are kept exclusively Japanese, like say Neuro, a fun series about a demon detective who eats mysteries, om nom nom. But that was never released in English. So what's the morality in this case? Do you not have the right to experience this material because companies have decided that it's just not something they want to sell you? Can you really do that with something that straddles the line so closely between product and art? I mean, legally, obviously, yes, you can. It's not even a question. But again, legality is not always morality. And I don't see why I should be prohibited from such an experience, especially if I'm causing no financial harm, just because a company has decided that that experience is not profitable. Which is why if I was part of one of these businesses, I would see piracy as not just a problem, but a potential solution. Because these organizations, they're practically handing you a tried and tested successful business model. They're demonstrating what the marketplace desires, and as a business, that information should be invaluable. And the insane thing is, these piracy sites, they're not run by sophisticated giant mega groups. It's usually a couple of people just working out of a basement at home or something. And as a business with a frankly shocking level of resources, you could take the model of whatever the pirates are doing, refine it, innovate it, and use it to eliminate the need for piracy altogether. What's another good example? I mean, Game of Thrones it's always the most famous one, isn't it? The issue there was that people didn't want to pay HBO or any of the licensees an exorbitant subscription fee just to watch Game of Thrones. Because being real, they weren't watching anything else there. So as a result, it became the most pirated show in human history so far, which is just the invisible hand of economics in full swing. The idea that in a free market economy, unseen forces move in the direction of the best interests of society. That's a theoretical idea anyway, and it's a complicated topic, but I do believe that piracy is a good example of this effect. It's an unseen force that spawns in response to demand. And if you're operating within that marketplace, you'll probably have a much easier time trying to swim with the tide rather than swimming against it. Which brings us back to Shueisha and the other three. As much as they are legally and arguably morally in the right here, this is definitely swimming against the tide. They're addressing the symptom of a problem rather than the cause. And to be clear, they absolutely have a case. They definitely have the right to halt piracy of their IP in any way they deem fit, but they've injected so much time, energy, and resources into an effort that, in my opinion, contains no real benefit for society at large. Because sure, even if this lawsuit is successful and Cloudflare ceases providing services to these piracy websites, look, they're still gonna find a way. And all of this will have amounted to nothing because all you will have done is force people to get more creative with their pirating methods, which they will do. They will put so much effort into this because you as a company are still not meeting their needs. So to me, this whole ordeal just feels like an exercise in seeing how much time and money we can waste tied up in various legal systems for the minimal possible outcome. And in the meantime, there's also the risk that what you're doing is antagonizing fans of your properties. Because whether it's right or wrong, you're attacking access to the things that they love, while simultaneously promising nothing to step in and give them that access yourself. And this sentiment is incredibly apparent because when Viz posted Shueisha's statement on Twitter, it was immediately met with a sea of quote retweets. You can solve this problem so easily. I want to read Gintama. Viz. Best we can give you is the first 1/4 of the series. Okay then, I'll find scans. Viz. No. Insane how we support the official stuff when we can, but not all series are officially distributed. Reborn got 16 out of 42 volumes, Gintama got 21 out of 77, Neuro got ? Nube got ? We can't support official releases if they don't exist, and we shouldn't have great series kept from us like this. And look, that is a sliver of the problem. There are also cases where people are unreasonably pirating series, like arguably I would say One Piece and most Weekly Shonen Jump properties. But regardless, the solution is just so painfully clear, and it's what they're going to have to do eventually. But Japanese business practices in particular are just so stuck behind modern innovation that they are going to have to be dragged kicking and screaming. And again, piracy is illegal, and I'm not defending it. I just think that there are much better ways to fight against it.